turns the light on.
You want to stay for this?
Good afternoon. It is slightly after 2 o'clock, and we will call to order the May 21st meeting of the Oklahoma City Water Utilities Trust. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the May 7th trust meeting. Minutes are in your packet. Any questions or comments on the minutes? Seeing none, is there a motion for approval? We have a motion and a second. Please vote. And it passes unanimously. There it is. All right. Next on the agenda is a consent docket. There are about 10 items on the consent docket. A couple contracts and final acceptances, professional services. Are there any items on the consent docket that the trustees would like to poll for questions or individual consideration? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the consent docket? We have a motion second. Please vote. And it passes unanimously. One item on the concurrence docket, it's an item with the city having to do with some improvements down at Tinker Air Force Base. There are no AQUIT funds involved in this project. Are there any questions on the item on the concurrence docket? We have a motion? And it passes. There are no emergency contracts this week, which moves us into items for individual consideration. Item 6A is a joint resolution with the city, and it has to do with cleaning up a resolution that was previously passed pertaining to authority given to the municipal counselor's office to do work on our behalf. Are there any questions or comments regarding the resolution? All right, is there a motion for approval? Motion is second. Please vote. And it passes. Item 6B is a presentation on the 5-year CIP plan, which will be followed by a presentation on our fiscal budget for 24-25. So Will.
Sir. Good afternoon, Chairman, trustees. Apologize, my voice is a little gravelly, dealing with some allergy stuff. But going to give you an update on the CIP, the current status, and then the next 5-year look ahead. So going to start with just a recap of FY24, some of the challenges that we're facing, and then look at 25 to 29. So the recap just shows you the planned values that we presented last year on water, sewer, solid waste, and then the current projected on items that have either been encumbered or plan to be encumbered before the end of the fiscal year. You'll notice a large delta there, particularly on the water side. We've had several changes to our second Toka pipeline bid schedule due to some financing challenges. Our finance team has diligently worked and came up with a solution for us, and we'll actually be able to start advertising the first of those delayed projects next month. We also had 4 water treatment plant awards moved from late FY24 to FY25 just due to design delays. And then the Overholser Dam Stability Project was originally scheduled for this year, but due to design changes, once we got into detailed design, that schedule is going to shift out a couple of years just due to the changes to that design. The Western Interconnect segments shifted once again, primarily due to one remaining easement that we're working to secure. We're very close and hope to secure that in the next couple months. And then we also had to move the first Atoka pipeline balancing tank. The second phase of that project was shifted due to financing issues. On the sewer side, we've had 4.
So when will the first drop of water reach Draper through the new pipeline?
The end of 2028.
Thank you.
We'll touch on that a little bit with the, on one of the later slides. And then we had a few of our sewer, our wastewater treatment plant projects that were either slated for late FY '25 that are now going to be or late FY '24 that'll now be FY '25, primarily due to either permitting hang-up for our blower project and then some design changes on the disinfection project in North Canadian. On solid waste, you'll see an overage there, and that's due to purchasing some equipment, some delayed equipment purchases from previous years that weren't able to be completed due to availability of equipment. So, touched on kind of the challenges we've had there in '24, but do want to highlight a few of the successes. So, we have either completed or in the process of completing a little over 6 miles of small diameter water main replacements. We've progressed the design of several wastewater or water treatment plant improvement projects that will be advertised in FY '25. The Hefner Lime System Improvement Project, which is a brand new lime system at Hefner. Water treatment plant is coming online as we speak. They're doing operational testing, and by the end of the summer, that system should be online. And we progressed the construction of the ozone improvements at Hefner, and that project should be completed with construction by late summer of 2025 or early fall. And then we've also completed two segments of the Sacanatoga pipeline. Those 2 segments are entering into closeout phase, and we'll be wrapping them up shortly. On the sewer side, we've replaced, or in the process of replacing, around 11 miles of small diameter sewer main. We progressed the detailed design of several significant wastewater treatment plant projects that are going to be bid in FY '25. And then the South Canadian and North Canadian improvement projects continue to progress on construction as well. On solid waste, we completed an assessment of the operations facility and developed a master plan for improvements. And the first phase will be implemented in FY '25. So I'm not going to go through each one of these challenges in detail, but just kind of highlight some of the challenges we faced over the last year and we anticipate and continue to run into, such as aging infrastructure, needs outweighing funding, regulatory mandates, particularly PFOS and PFAS, and the lead and copper rule, continuing rising costs on the O&M and the capital side, financing the capital program, volatile construction costs. We've seen pricing on small diameter pipelines start to stabilize, but we continue to see some fluctuation in some of our large plant projects, particularly that involve electrical components. Continue to see some equipment and material lead time issues on pumps, large electrical gear such as switch gear, VFDs, and then continues to be a very strong competitive job market, which translates to labor constraints in the construction industry. We're seeing some of our contractors have difficulty staffing large projects. So how we're trying to combat these, particularly ones that involve like financing, rising cost, and then needs outweighing funding, is really trying to figure out how we can effectively create an effective capital improvement plan that's also affordable. So we're balancing the cost side with the need side, particularly when we want to maintain the level of service that our citizens are used to receiving. So last year, we went through as a group a rudimentary prioritization process where we scored every single project that's in the CIP, ranked it, and as a group, operations, finance, executive leadership, engineering, and came up with a programmed priority 1 and priority 2 classification. So we use those same prioritizations this year to make some adjustments. And as you can see, with the rising costs that we've seen and continue to forecast, we're showing about 11%, an additional 11% unfunded in the CIP, which I'll talk about some of the programming changes we made later. But we've also used this as an opportunity to develop a tool to help us better implement the CIP, which I'll go over. So the main 3 components of a CIP program, you want to be able to assess your asset risk, you actually develop the actual projects and programs, and then the financial impact. So we've developed a CIP prioritization optimization tool with SRB and Black & Veatch, which established a consistent risk framework that had input from operations, finance, engineering, and executive leadership. And we score, which allows us to score each project and gather other key critical information such as project budgets, the early start date, earliest start date, the latest start date, and the mandatory completion date. And with that, we can input this into a data model and run Monte Carlo simulations, which allow us to analyze the impact of either funding, labor constraints, or risk rate changes and risk priorities that we have as a utility. So with this slide is one of the dashboards that'll be coming out. We're in the home stretch to finalizing this tool, but as you can see, with the before here is all the projects, and basically before the project is complete, the risk scoring for each project and where they fall within the different category, consequence of failure with likelihood of failure, and then after the project is complete, as you can see, what you want to see is the scores move down to the bottom left, and allows us to look at, the projects that have high risk levels, and then see how much risk we can mitigate by implementing the project and how much that risk costs to mitigate. And then the real value that we're going to see in this tool is that it runs millions of simulations to determine the most optimal way to deploy capital funds. So with the top graph here is a bar graph showing the dark being the planned spending that we put in as the current CIP versus an optimized CIP, where it ran based on our project score, our risk framework, and all the inputs, and how to optimize the spending of the CIP to reduce the overall risk profile of the utility. So down on the bottom, we've got to clean up the colors, but the dark blue on the bottom represents the actual risk profile for scenario one. And so we've finished the initial draft run. We're going through QA/QC right now. But moving forward, what we'll be able to do is analyze various scenarios, such as if we think we're going to get a federal grant for, say, the Hefner Water Treatment Plant, we can input that scenario in and figure out what projects we want to bring forward from priority one status into program status. So allow us to nimbly respond to changes either in market conditions or additional funding or labor constraints, and with the goal of being able to execute our CIP in a way that furthers our mission to providing clean water and trash services to central Oklahoma, but also reducing the overall risk profile of the utility. So just touch real quickly on impact from a financing standpoint. I touched on it on the first slide, but we have had around $150 million worth of construction awards delayed just due to issues that we have with our commercial paper program. As I mentioned earlier, our finance team has worked tirelessly. Tirelessly, I can't really speak today, has worked very hard to come up with a solution and allow us to actually move into executing these construction projects, which we're very grateful for. They do create a potential pinch point in FY25 construction awards, which I'll touch on in a later slide. So just kind of moving into the 2025. So the overall CIP is just under $1.9 billion for water, sewer, and solid waste. The bulk of it, around 72%, is spent on the water side. There's around 26% that'll be spent on the sewer side, and 2% spent on solid waste. And we'll go into a little bit of the details of those breakdowns. But first, just talk about this potential pinch point in FY25 construction awards. So we're estimating the need to get at around $600 million in construction awards. So that's a result of the financial challenges pushing the delay of some of the Second Atoka pipeline awards, but also, Mr. Cowles, to your point, wanting to maintain the schedule of having water being pumped from Atoka via the new pipeline by the end of 2028. So it's created a little bit of a compression in 25 and seeing a big spike. You can see it because we're planning to put out for bid and award 3 pump stations and 2 pipeline segments. And we also have several other plant projects that need to be completed. So we are proactively working with the contracting community to ensure that we put these out in a responsible manner that will get us competitive bids and that we don't oversaturate the market. And we've developed a prioritized list of these construction awards, with Second Atoka pipeline being at the top, and then also there's Deer Creek Biosolids and Odor Control Project, which has federal grant money that'll be given to us that we want to make sure that we get out and awarded by the end of the fiscal year to take advantage of that $2 million. So we have a plan in place for executing, and we're proactively working with the contracting community to make sure that we get these projects bid and award. So we have seen an increase in overall forecasted costs in the CIP, which resulted in needing to deprogram, essentially move from program to priority one, 5 different projects, one being the Hefner Water Treatment Plant Improvements Phase 2. This is primarily a non-process related project that's going to address the admin building and some other areas at the plant. We're completing Phase 1. We expect to bid that in 2020 and FY25, and that is really process improvements. So we're taking care of the process improvements and just deprioritizing right now some of the administrative building improvements. The Draper Water Treatment Plant Filter Rehab Phase 2 is going to be moved from program to priority 1. We're completing Phase 1, which is going to address the most critical filters. We expect to complete design during 2025 and bid that in 2026. And then Hefner Water Treatment Plant Clarifier Rehabilitation Phase 2. This will be any rehab work on clarifiers 4 and 5 is being deprogrammed from program to priority 1. We're going to be completing the most urgent rehabilitations of clarifiers 1, 2, and 3, completing detailed design in 25 and construction in 26. So these aren't improvements that are needed immediately, but they are planned for the future. And there's a 5th phase of the Draper 72-inch water transmission main replacement program. We've completed the replacement of the most critical sections. There are some areas identified as potential projects. They aren't a concern at this moment based on the inspections, but we'll monitor those. But that project has been deprioritized since we've taken care of the most critical assets. So just a little bit of a breakdown on the water side. The bulk of it being spent on water supply, around 65%, and most of that money being put into the Second Atoka pipeline program. And then on resiliency and reliability, about 35% of that, and a lot of that's being spent at the water treatment plants, and then on our small diameter water main replacements. Just a couple water CIP highlights. I know Larry gave an update, I think a couple months ago, but just, we have 2 segments of the Second Atoka pipeline that are in closeout. There's 3 segments that are currently under construction. The next project that we anticipate bringing out to bid, we actually hope to put that, advertise that for bid in the second half of June. It'll be Pump Station O, followed by 2 pipeline segments and then 2 more pump station segments. So we're looking forward to getting 4 of the projects for Atoka a bid and award under construction in the next fiscal year. Other water CIP highlights. So we have the Western Interconnect. We have 3 remaining segments. This project has been delayed primarily due to the easement acquisition, but as I mentioned before, we anticipate wrapping up that issue, and we plan to bid these projects in 25, and they should be constructed 12 to 18 months after being awarded. We have several projects at Draper Water Treatment Plant to address resiliency and reliability. We'll be completing filter pipe gallery improvements, addressing some piping and valve issues there, and then also completing a filter rehabilitation Phase 1, which will rehabilitate 4 filters along with completing some improvements to different influent and effluent films at the filter. We have a Hefner Water Treatment Plant improvements project slated. Phase 1 will be completed, and then we'll also be completing detailed design, and then the first phase of construction of the Overholser Dam structural stability improvements, and then we'll continue our water main replacement program. On the sewer side, it's just under $500 million slated, with the bulk of it being in resiliency and reliability, primarily be investing in the Deer Creek Wastewater Treatment Plant, the North Canadian Wastewater Treatment Plant, and then as well as continue our small diameter sewer main replacement program. So just a couple highlights. We'll actually be advertising for bid the first phase of the aeration system improvements master plan, which will take place at Deer Creek Wastewater Treatment Plant. And later this fall, we'll also be bringing forward to advertise for bid the biosolids and odor control short-term Phase 1 at Deer Creek Wastewater Treatment Plant. Around the same time, we'll actually have a major electrical system improvements at Deer Creek. Will be the first phase of creating a loop electrical system, which will improve reliability and redundancy at the plant. We'll also be wrapping up detailed design and then bidding and awarding the disinfection and decoordination improvements at North Canadian Wastewater Treatment Plant. This is part of our overall business plan to move away from on-site from chlorine gas for disinfection to on-site sodium hypochlorite, which is a lot safer for our staff and the public. We'll also be completing Deer Creek Wastewater Treatment Plant. We'll be completing a clarifier rehab that needs to take place in advance of the expansion. And then we plan to start detailed design and eventually construction of the expansion at Deer Creek, which will also include conversion from chlorine gas to on-site sodium hypochlorite at that facility as well. On the solid waste side, just over $32 million slated. Primarily, that'd be in solid waste equipment, equipment replacement, cart purchases, but we also will be completing the first phase of the solid waste operation facility improvements. There'll be some administration building improvements, parking lot improvements, and the addition of a tornado shelter. With that, I'll take any questions.
Are there any questions for Will regarding the CIP? Very, very impressive. We have an item to approve the 5-year capital improvement plan, item B2. Is there a motion to do so? Motion? Second, please vote. And it passes unanimously. Vanessa, we have a $1.178 billion operating budget.
Yeah.
You want to
Yes.
explain to us how we're going to do that?
Doing well. Good afternoon, Chairman and Trustees. My name is Vanessa Aguilar with the Utilities Department, and I am here today to present to you this agenda item, which is the fiscal year 2025 Oklahoma City Water Utilities budget. As the Chairman mentioned, it is rounded to $1.2 billion for this coming year. We'll give you a little bit of background before we get into the details. So on the next slide, just as reference, Aquat's mission statement is the commitment to providing water, wastewater, and trash collection services throughout central Oklahoma to safeguard public health and the environment, support public safety, and enable economic prosperity. Aligned with that, we also establish core business initiatives which align to City Council priorities. These also help our strategic planning and also help our budget planning process, in which each of our budget initiatives align to one or more of these core business initiatives. These include safety. We're committed to providing a safe work environment for our employees, but also for the public. Customer service. We're committed to providing quality customer service and delivering a high level of service to our customers. Water supply. We are committed to ensuring that we have secured long-term water supply to meet the needs of central Oklahoma and to ensure that we have the appropriate infrastructure. With that, system resiliency and reliability. As Will mentioned, we're investing in our facilities, both water and wastewater, to ensure that all of our utilities have reliability and resiliency of the systems and minimizing the likelihood of a disruption. Financial management. Aquat has maintained strong financial management principles which have enabled us to maintain our AAA credit rating, as recently affirmed by both credit rating agencies in April. This allows us to have access to the lowest interest rates possible, benefiting our customers. And last but not least, regulatory compliance. We're committed to meeting all regulations as established at the federal, state, and local level. Before I get into the details, I'll give you a little bit of context for our fiscal year 25 budget and some of the challenges that we're addressing through the initiatives that we'll go in detail on the next slides. Inflationary increases, supply chain challenges, and difficulty in being able to recruit and retain a qualified workforce have been challenges for Oklahoma City Water Utilities Trust. We continue to experience unprecedented price increases across the board. For example, in 2022, the entire nation saw inflation spike to 9%, which was a 40-year high. While the trend has seen a decline since then, we're still seeing elevated cost of goods since 2020. As an example, electricity has increased from $10.4 million in FY20 to our proposed budget for FY25 is $20.3 million in order to manage the increases we've seen from our suppliers. Treatment chemicals have more than doubled in the last 3 years, from $6.6 million to $13.5 million for our fiscal year 25 budget. For supply chain challenges, since the pandemic, we have continued to see supply chain and logistical delays in receiving parts and materials, and in some cases, services as well. As an example, brass parts, it was taking us anywhere from 20 to 30 weeks to be able to receive some of the orders that had been placed. Trash trucks is another example. We would place an order for trash trucks in 2020, and it would take more than a year or 2 years to fulfill those orders from suppliers. In recruiting and retaining a qualified workforce, we have continued to see an average about 100 vacancies over the last 6 years. Coupled with turnover in many of our operations divisions, we're seeing more of our tenured employees taking on the need to make sure that we're meeting the level of service for our customers. As an example, 49% of current utilities departments employees have 5 years or less of experience with the department. As you'll see in a future slide, we are investing more money in recruiting and retaining our workforce. We're improving employee engagement, communication, our training programs, but furthermore, we're relying on outside services, and we're leveraging technology efficiencies and improvements to our systems. Typically, we do a cost of service every 4 to 5 years. These cost of services allow us to assess what does it cost to provide the service for water, wastewater, or solid waste. And we update our fees and charges. The last time we did that study was in 2021. Most of the costs that we've seen that have been increasing has been after that. So as you can see, the assumptions that were built in our current fees and charges, we could not have foreseen the increases that we're seeing in O&M and borrowing costs, and as Will mentioned, in the cost of capital. How we are managing that in our budget is we are reprioritizing our capital program, we're rephasing or rescheduling to ensure that we're meeting our O&M costs and we're meeting our debt service requirements first. So here's a snapshot of this upcoming year's budget. This is the sources, and it gives you a breakdown by the different sources. 54% is for debt construction fund proceeds. This is a portion of how we fund our capital program. $633 million, which comes in the form of state revolving fund loans from the Oklahoma Water Resources Board. We also utilize a commercial paper program, which is short-term financing. And this upcoming fiscal year, we'll be looking at potentially pursuing another form of short-term financing in the form of a bank note program. The breakdown of this is $555 million is for water projects and about $78 million for wastewater projects. The next large source of revenue for the trust is service charges. Those are the service charges that I mentioned, fees and charges from our customers for water, wastewater, and solid waste. In aggregate, those three come up to be about $437 million. Aquat recently completed a revenue bond transaction. We'll have a closing on that in the coming week. But from that recent bond transaction, it did give Aquat access to some revenue bond proceeds. $62 million is what we're anticipating to use in the form of replenishment of cash reserves. That will help Aquat fund a few capital projects in the coming year, about $35 million for water and $27 million for wastewater projects. Similarly, withdrawals from cash reserves, $29 million. That is also going to fund capital projects. This is for projects that were initially scheduled in this current fiscal year in '24 and were designated to be cash funded. Due to scheduling rearrangements. Those projects are now scheduled to be awarded in '25, so we're allocating the cash funding for those projects in the coming year as well. The remainder of the sources total up to about $18 million. Other sources include chargeback revenue that we get for billing services on behalf of other providers. Aqua has its own billing system, so we provide a billing service on behalf of stormwater quality and the ambulance fee for the city, so we do provide a service chargeback for that. System development charges of about $6 million. That's $5 million in forecasted revenue for water and $1 million in forecasted revenue for wastewater. These are fees that are collected when there's new construction that connects to either one of those systems at the time of connection or construction. Those are fees that are collected and assessed. Flow fee revenues of about $2 million. These are revenues specifically for solid waste management. These fees are collected from private haulers that collect commercial waste and dispose of that at the landfills within the city area. They are assessed a fee, which is projected to be $2 million based on the forecasted tonnage. These revenues are remitted back to solid waste management, which will be used to help fund environmental cleanup programs, which include illegal dumping, street sweeping, and litter pickup. The last item on here, non-rate revenues, which is recreational or non-operating revenue sources in nature. On the next slide, we will go ahead and show you the intended uses of our budget, again, rounded up to $1.2 billion. The largest portion that we see here is for the capital program. As Will mentioned, $815 million for water, wastewater, and solid waste. That's approximately $663 million for water, about $143 million for wastewater, and $9 million for solid waste management. Over $400 million of that capital improvement plan is for the Second Atoka pipeline, so accessing water supply and ensuring that we have that availability is a large portion of what you're seeing in that 69% of our uses. This does include deferred capital projects of about $358 million from fiscal year '24 and going into fiscal year '25. The next largest form of funding use is the city utilities operations budget. This is about forecasted to be $106 million, and our proposed Oklahoma City Utilities Department budget is $112.8. So the differential there is primarily reserves. We budget for reserves in our city budget, but that's not something that we intend to use or that we intend to transfer in any given year. So we budget about 94% execution of our proposed city budget. Trust operations is forecasted at $96 million for the coming year. Primary items that are funded out of this portion here include the multi-year contracts, professional services, payments to the city, a payment in lieu of tax, lease payments. We pay all of our billing system support providers. We have our chemicals, our inventory materials that we have, electricity is all funded out of the $96 million for trust operations. Debt service of $77 million. As I mentioned on the previous slide, we do use debt financing, and many of those debt financings may be 30 years, in some cases 40-year, but those loans and revenue bonds, we have an annual principal and interest payment. We also have temporary interest that we pay on those loans, and so the annual amount for this coming year is projected to be $77 million. This debt service amount is expected to triple over the next 10 years as we continue to execute the capital improvement program that we've described earlier. Solid waste service contracts, we have approximately $50 million. About 60% of our solid waste management service area is served by the private contractor. Recycling, trash pickup, and bulky is a part of that contract. About $37 million is what we're projecting for the coming year. We do contract with 4 landfills around the city to dispose of residential waste and the bulky waste at the local landfills. That's forecasted to be about $8 million in the coming year. For solid waste management, we outsource our fleet maintenance for our specialized equipment. So we do have a contract with fleet maintenance that's also included in that, and that's projected to be about $4 million. Wastewater treatment plant operations and maintenance of about $24 million. We also have a privatized contractor that operates and maintains our wastewater facilities around the city, and that's a 24/7 operation. McGee Creek operations at $10 million. This does include also capital rescheduled projects that were initially scheduled in FY24, and now we're seeing those awards expected to be performed in FY25. So $10 million is what we're expecting to transfer to McGee Creek Authority. Non-ratepayer activities, $1 million. These are those expenses related to recreational activities or non-operating activities in nature. We'll go into a little bit more detail here on this slide, going to the City Utilities Department budget to give you an overview. Overall, we're seeing about a 4% increase to the city budget, going from the FY24 original adopted budget to the proposed FY25 budget. That's just less than $4 million. You can see here the breakdown. About $5.5 million is for annual salary and benefits, which include merit adjustments, insurance, benefits, retirement. Salary reserves is a reduction of about $927,000. That's an adjustment due to the current fiscal year. We had a COLA, cost of living adjustment, of about 6%. For the upcoming year, we're forecasting that to normalize down to maybe 3%. Department position improvements. The department is adding one position, a SCADA systems analyst. That is a fully dedicated position for our Tinker Air Force Base line of business. It is fully funded by the federal government. That's a position that was anticipated at the time of contract negotiation. Other than that, in the $259,000, we also have other position improvements within the department where we're doing add deletes to help improve for the organization. That's in engineering, wastewater quality, and line maintenance. Department services and supplies, we're adjusting that by about $945,000. Again, that's on the city side. That's helping give some of our divisions additional funding for the day-to-day in addressing some of those inflationary costs that we've mentioned. Department transfers to Aqua, transferring from the city utilities to the Aqua operations of about $1.9 million. We'll provide a little bit more detail in the coming slides. City chargebacks, an adjustment of $39,000. The city provides support services to the trust, such as IT, administrative services, risk, and insurance. So it's netted to about $39,000. So even though, just in summary on the budget slide, even though Aqua is not sales tax funded, we have mirrored the city's initiative to have a conservative city budget, adding only one position, which is the position for Tinker Air Force Base, fully funded by the federal government. Our utilities department position count will be 826 positions in the coming fiscal year. So now as we go a little bit more into how we're addressing those budgetary challenges that I mentioned on the previous slides, one of the areas is we're increasing services and supplies funding, both on the city utilities side and in our trust operations. On the city utilities, we're increasing services and supplies by the $913,000 that I mentioned, primarily in water quality, wastewater, and line maintenance. Some of the increases that water quality has seen, for example, costs have increased by 37%, and supplies have increased by about 33% for water quality in order to be able to maintain and operate our water facilities. Another example in trust operations, as I mentioned earlier, treatment chemicals have increased significantly. Specifically, lime, in order to treat our water, has increased 50% just this year, and since 2020, it has increased 73%. Gaseous chlorine, another treatment chemical, increased 20% this year, and since 2020, it has increased 540%. Some of the other improvements that we're doing is we're looking to centralize our funding sources. So we have a couple of contracts for root control, fats, oils, and grease, and cell phone services. We're looking to centralize that funding source into one place. Currently, we have them in different places, so we're moving about $1.9 million from our city utilities budget over to Aquit Trust operations. This will help us manage our condition assessment program, which is currently funded out of Aquit's capital plan. As engineering receives those reports and findings, and line maintenance will be able to address those through service orders and address any areas that are needed. These are multi-year contracts, and so if there's need to adjust funding, this also gives us the flexibility to do that on the Aquit operations side. And again, it's for ease of administration, having it being in one funding source. So ensuring that adequate funding for services and supplies is crucial in meeting various performance measures for the department, such as water treatment and ultimately maintaining compliance with drinking water standards. Some of the LFR measures that we've highlighted here to show that, the first one is 100% of water quality tests meeting primary drinking standards. And so in this graph, we show a 5-year history of that performance, and primary drinking standards are related to public health and safety requirements. As you can see here on the dotted line, that is our target to be at 100%. The solid blue line, which is overlapping with our target, shows you actual performance. So for this measure, we are meeting our target in every year. The columns in each of the 5 years represents how many tests did we actually conduct on a year-to-year basis. As you can see, there is a slight variation to the number of tests that were performed, and that's primarily due to the system demand, how much water was treated that given year, and how many water treatment units we had online in that given year. So that's the reason for the variation there. On this next slide here, you see 100% of water quality tests meeting secondary drinking water standards. That's another performance measure goal that we have. And secondary drinking standards, that's related more to the aesthetics of the drinking water. So it's going to be attributed to color, taste, odor, and hardness of the water. So that's different from the primary drinking standards that you saw on the previous slide. As you can see here, our target is also 100%, as noted on the dotted blue line. The solid blue line gives you the actual performance year by year. You can see that there is a slight decline in 2023, and since then we're seeing an increase. This is attributed to a couple of things. One, as I mentioned, the cost of chemicals has had an immediate impact, but also in 2023, we had a hot, dry season. And with that, it takes more chemicals to treat the aesthetics of our water and the water quality. With the additional chemical budget funding that we're proposing in FY25, we do expect that we'll be able to meet our target in the coming year and be near or at 100% in FY 2025. So in the next area, as we mentioned, budgetary challenge related to supply chain issues. So how we're looking at addressing that in this upcoming year is we're doing a couple of initiatives. We're improving and increasing our stock levels for critical parts and hard to find parts. We're also adjusting our reorder points to ensure that if we are anticipating a long lead time, that we'll have enough inventory on hand to cover that. And this is primarily for our centralized warehouse, and the largest customer of our warehouse is our line maintenance division that does repairs and replacements of our water and wastewater lines. We're adding about $1.1 million to our warehouse budget to ensure that we have enough funding to purchase the inventory necessary to meet these needs. So our adjustments in the funding is making sure that we're responding to those supply chain challenges, ensuring that our staff has access to those crucial supplies, allowing them to achieve the goal of completing 75% of total work as planned and scheduled as preventative maintenance. And to improve this measure, we're wanting to make sure that we have enough inventory on hand for them to do their work. This showcases the performance results for line maintenance, their water division. Again, the goal is 75% of total work completed as planned and scheduled. The dotted line shows the target. Initially, in earlier years, that was 70% target. That was adjusted upwards to about 75%. You can see over the 5-year history, line maintenance has met or exceeded that target to complete planned and scheduled work. Some of the variations that we see in year to year is their response to urgent requests, to reactionary work orders, which are Code 1s and Code 2s, what we consider to be needing immediate attention in order to support public safety and public health. Those take priorities in situations that we might have high demand. Code 1s and Code 2s vary year to year depending on the weather, depending on the environment, and other environmental factors. However, when staff does have the ability to focus on planned and scheduled work, our goal is to make sure that with the funding that they have the parts and materials to do planned and scheduled work. But even for our urgent work orders, we want to ensure that they have access to those critical parts as well. One of the other challenges that we mentioned is the difficulty in being able to recruit and retain a qualified workforce. There are several internal initiatives that the department is executing in this regard. The first one is related to a comprehensive communication plan. A couple of years ago, the City of Oklahoma City conducted an initial employee engagement survey. Those initial results indicated for the Utilities Department, we had an employee engagement score of about 3.49 out of a 5 engagement score. What this indicated to us, according to Gallup, that the Utilities Department had room for improvement in order to improve engagement, communication with employees, recognition, having access to the materials that they need to help keep employees engaged in the workforce. So over the past couple of years, we've invested in developing the comprehensive communication plan. This communication plan establishes standard procedures for using communication channels to ensure messages from the city, utilities leadership, and division leadership reach all employees throughout the organization. We're also evaluating technology solutions for an employee hub that will allow for electronic and digital messaging and communication platforms to reach all of our employees, and again, to enable that two-way communications with employees and utilities leadership. We're also in the second or third year of implementing our onboarding program. The picture that you see on the slide here is from our new hire group, from our most recent new hire program. This program was established to help us with the goal of retaining our employees. The onboarding program is a 2-day tour which takes new hires to tour our water, wastewater, and solid waste facilities. They get to learn from the divisions all of the opportunities that we have and throughout the organization, to where if their current role doesn't align with their career goals or where they would like to be eventually, that they can see that there are opportunities within the department with the goal to be able to retain employees within the division. We're also looking at implementing our updated Utilities University Management Training Program. As you might know, Utilities University, also known as UU, was implemented over 10 years ago to help with succession planning. This is a curriculum and training program that allows us to train our employees so that they can fulfill and be able to have skills to promote into supervisory roles. It trains our supervisors. It is required for supervisors. And the track 1, it's about 130 class hours, which gives them access to training such as accountability, effective supervisory classes, and others. Track 2 will continue to develop these courses for the employees and look at classes such as coaching, mentoring, team dynamics, and advanced classes such as intermediate business writing. We anticipate that these updated training programs will allow the enhancement of both soft and hard skills for our employees, continue to develop our workforce, provide for the opportunities in career advancement, and overall fostering a positive organizational culture. Last but not least, technology utilization. I mentioned that in addition to the initiatives that we're embarking to help retain our employees and recruit, we're also leveraging technology efficiencies. Some of those include programs that we have recently implemented, such as the Automated Meter Reading Program, AMR. The ability to read our meters rather than walking the routes, meter readers will be able to, from their vehicles, get the meter reads electronically to their device. This will provide efficiency for our meter readers, as well as minimizing the likelihood of errors in the reads. Another utilization of technology that we're implementing in customer service and solid waste is mobile workforce. We're looking at having the ability to provide electronic access to our field employees to where they're no longer using paper forms. They're able to fill out their work orders digitally and have access to information real time. So those are some of the efficiencies that we're looking and how we're able to do our work more efficiently as well. We have a new performance goal for fiscal year 25 that we'll be looking to implement to help us look at our workforce development program. And this goal is for 100% of our employees to complete their career development plan within the department. This career development plan will be established with the employee and the supervisor using our Oracle Human Resources system, in which they will have an opportunity mid-year to conduct a mid-year coaching and mentoring session to see where they are for the full year review. This will allow opportunities for employees to develop those career goals and allow supervisors to coach and lead their employees as well. The City of Oklahoma City conducts a resident survey each year. This is the most recent survey results for the Utilities Department. On this slide, you can see that overall, utilities in Oklahoma City is setting the benchmark. For cities of similar size, we're over 30% differential. For cities compared to the national average, Oklahoma City Utilities is over 26% differential. And this is across the board in residential trash collection and bulky in recycling, water and wastewater service, as well as overall city customer service. Now, despite our budgetary challenges, we are still delivering a high level of service to our customers. And so with that, we're happy to answer any questions you might have.
Great presentation on the 2025 budget. In fact, both presentations, the capital improvement plan, were really helpful and meaningful in these budgetary crucial times. I think I know what button down the hatch means now after seeing what we've been going through since probably 2020. Are there any questions that anyone would like to ask about the presentation on the 2025 Oklahoma City Water Utilities budget? Then I need to entertain a motion to receive the report. Is that correct? Do we have a motion and a second? To approve. Okay, thank you. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes. It passes. Once again, great job. Thank you very much. Next item is item number 7, items from trustees. Are there any matters from trustees today? Then we'll next turn it over to item 8, which is the general manager report.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. First of all, I want to thank Will and his team for the hard work on the capital program. We're making a great progress despite all the challenges. And to Vanessa and her team for the hard work. That's probably an understatement in developing this year's budget. It's a really big number. Yeah. But keep in mind, you know, a fair part of that is deferral, where we had some challenges on financing that we were able to overcome, and she and her team really worked hard to overcome so that we could move forward with our critical projects. So thank you very much for that hard work. for your whole team as well. And then our trust section for putting all this stuff together where we could hear these presentations and take action appropriately. So thank you very much for your hard work as well. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Two of the best presentations I've seen in a long time. I know that was really hard, but you guys did a really good job, so thank you very much again. Are there citizens to be heard? There being none, then we are adjourned. Thank you.